Hey, what's up, everybody? Frederick Polk here. So, I was reading an article today that Air Canada, one of their routes, a lot of their routes going to Las Vegas and LA, Miami. We're talking pre-purchased, in the foreseeable future, ticket prices have dropped 70% from this year to last year. Wow. Oh, that is a catastrophically bad sign for U.S. tourism. And I'll tell you why. So, a little bit about me, if you don't know. I used to work in aviation. I got to a department head position at LAX with American Eagle at the height of my career. So I studied kind of a lot of this. It's part of my job, just to kind of know the industry. And there's a lot of metrics that airlines use to, basically calculate profitability, not just for their shareholders, but also what they need to purchase to run the business for the upcoming year. And I'll get into that side of it, the fiscal side first. So the thing about it is, running an airline, it's not like the family car, right? You don't just say, oh, I need gas. Let me go down to the service station and get gas. No. You have to order that stuff in advance because you want to make sure that it's available. And oil companies and fuel companies, they need that to say, oh, okay, we're anticipating this much demand from aviation. So, we're going to have this much processed and set aside because this is what, let's say, Air Canada or whatever needs. And you do that as an aviation company by looking at people who've bought tickets. Now, there's a way to break down, they typically break down passengers in two categories. One is your sort of business travelers, your consistent travelers. Those are your status people. Those are and that's kind of a smaller share. They make up a larger percentage in terms of revenue per passenger, but it's usually around, depending on your airline, 20 to 25%, somewhere in that range. The rest are broken up into seasonal or infrequent passengers, right? That's people that travel either once a year or once every few years. And that could be for all kinds of events, life-changing events or just family vacations. And those folks, typically, they either look for deals, but they plan this out at a minimum, usually 6 months in advance, sometimes longer. And they're the ones that you typically see them traveling from in the U.S. in tourism. Memorial Day weekend, so the end of May, up to Labor Day weekend. That's your vacation season. Now you have holiday season, which is like Thanksgiving and Christmas. That's its own thing. Or you have a little bit of spike in March. That's like spring break. You get like a little kind of hint of what vacation season might look like during that month. But typically, the bulk of your money is going to be in that vacation season from the end of May up to the beginning of September. In this scenario, a 10% drop is significant. It's significantly bad. 70%, that's when companies go out of business. Because just like how it's not, you got to have fuel set aside. You don't just go up with a plane to the service station and fill up. We're talking tens of millions of gallons of fuel. The way the airline industry operates, you calculate profitability based on that route. So let's say you've got a route from Toronto to Las Vegas, right? You've got a Canadian tourist wanting to come into Las Vegas and play the slots, do the hotels, casinos, all that good stuff, catch the shows, you name it. You calculate, you don't just get to park wherever you want and show up like, hey, we need a gate. No, you rent. That airline rents a gate space, or either buys gate space if it's a profitable enough route from the airport. And you have to use it, typically in the contract. It can't just sit there empty, because airports are their own entities too, and they have a revenue stream. So you basically make like, hey, you're going to have minimum number of flights going to this gate. You're going to have a minimum number of like your expected passengers are this. So then they decide who they're going to award that gate to, because you bid on it. So not only do you have to pay for that gate space, you got to have planes going into that gate to justify it. So that means you got to fly that metal, which means there's maintenance costs, there's upkeep costs, there's labor costs from the maintenance folks to the flight attendants to the crews, to the fuelers that fuel it, to the ramp agents that work that aircraft, to the managers who manage that process. There's all that, the caterers, you name it. We're talking hundreds of people just for one flight. And you make that up by having the passengers on the plane. Typically, you want everything to be full and everybody to be paying for it. 30%, you're losing money. Every time you put a plane in the air, you're losing money. And you don't really have a choice at that point. Because if you give up that gate space, maybe you break contract and there's penalties, but then one of your competitors swoops in, takes that gate space, you ain't getting it back. And then that's also not to say everything on the back end that Las Vegas is going to miss from Canadian travelers who aren't tourists, that are not there, who are not buying tickets to shows, who are not eating out, who are not getting hotel rooms, who are not dropping money up at the slots or at the tables, who are not spending money on all these things on their vacation. And overall, I don't know exactly what the Canadian tourism is for America, but that right there, a 70% drop from Canada to the US on Air Canada. Wow. That is apocalyptically bad. And if Europe follows suit, because they're reading all these stories about, ICE detaining people, and even if they're let go after 12 days, how many of you guys can miss work for 12 days after you're on vacation for, say, 2 weeks or 1 week? I don't care what country you live in and how cool they are. You're not going to risk it. You're absolutely not going to risk it. If it's a choice between America and somewhere else, you're going somewhere else. And then your money's going, and then their money's going with them. It's going somewhere else. This is catastrophically bad. Really bad. We'll see this summer, but I don't think it's going to be a good summer for people in the hospitality industry. Anyway, that's all I got for you. Keep the faith, defend democracy, and I'll see you later.